This is the Cover 3 Tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Tom Fornelli. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate. We do have some, everyone understands what the topic of the day is because our very own Bud Elliott was on site for the Elite 11. Got a couple questions from the tailgate already, and let's go ahead and do this just as a nice little icebreaker. Full Elite 11 recap coming up in just a little bit, but Bud, as a general question, Brett jumping into the tailgate, getting the conversation going early, and Brett says, Bud, would be curious to see how this Elite 11 has changed over the years. 7-on-7 seems to do wonders for these young quarterbacks. Any drawbacks? And so I guess let's save the player specific stuff for just a little bit later, but the Elite 11 in general, what do you think about the competition and sort of where it sits in the modern recruiting quarterback development world?
Yeah. So, I think all of these recruiting events have across the board have lost some level of juice in the NIL era, right? It just like from, I don't want to dime them out. Like all of them have lost something. And for some of them, we just don't do them anymore, right? Like there's no more Adidas 7-on-7. You don't have the opening anymore. Like there are some things that have gone away. But Elite 11 does a good job of pitching it as like the brotherhood, the fraternity, like a special thing to go to independent of just the competition type thing. And I think there actually is something to that. Like you have a lot of celebrities out there. Pete Carroll's out there just chopping it up and talking to anybody for as long as they want to talk to.
He can still throw.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah.
Pete Carroll can throw. Skin. Oh, man, let's go, Pete.
He can chuck it around, man. So I think Elite 11 is still something that if I was a quarterback, I would do it. Now, as far as 7-on-7 and how the Elite 11 has changed over the years, Elite 11 has done a pretty good job of making the drills, incorporating more drills that had more of an emphasis on mobility, right? When I first started covering this, like 15 years ago, I guess, it was very like stationary, all West Coast concept type stuff. And that really wasn't a fit for a lot of the quarterbacks that were dominating college football back then, right? And also some now. Like mobility matters, okay? There are some quarterbacks that we all love who probably would do pretty poorly in the old Elite 11 system. But in the new thing, running around, throwing off platform, dodging guys actually has quite a bit to do with success as well. So that's been good. I think 7-on-7 only helps quarterbacks, really. Now, I was kind of just shooting the breeze with Andrew Ivins on the sideline, and he had mentioned that he wonders if 7-on-7 hurts receivers some because they're not running track like they used to. And like we had a noticeable drop in terms of like number of kids that ran certain times this year in our home state, Florida. And it's like there's not as many kids running track anymore from football, probably because they're playing so much travel 7-on-7. So does that make you slower? Like because you're not learning how to really run? I don't know. But it's summer. We could bring up stuff like that.
No. Like that's interesting. I mean, I've
Big
always
Ten's been ahead of the curve on being slower for years now. So the SEC is finally catching up.
Look at that. Was 7-on-7 a Big Ten plant?
People are asking. A little bit of news that happened since we last joined you on Thursday. A reminder that I'm not guaranteeing, but if you go leave us a 5-star review for the big old bag of mail, in that review, you put your question. Wednesday, we're going to be talking blue chip ratio with Bud, but then also answering mailbag questions. Thursday, wall-to-wall hitting mailbag questions from the tailgate as well. Go ahead and get it in because in July, we've got business to take care of. So anything that has been rolling around your brain, you've been wondering what the Cover 3 guys think about it. Now is a great time to do that. News on Friday came out that Oklahoma and Brent Venables have agreed to a new 6-year deal that includes a notable raise and adds 2 additional seasons. The deal now runs through 2029. It has a total value of $51.6 million, which means that he can earn an average of more than $8.5 million annually throughout the course of the deal. Now, if I gave you Brent Venables' head coaching record and showed you $8.5 million and you were living in 2017, your mind would be blown. And so, Tom, what I was curious about with this news is whether you think this is a signal from Oklahoma in terms of its investment as the Sooners make the move to the SEC, or is this just the cost of doing business at a program like this in 2024?
I think it's probably a little bit of everything. Like, I think it's acknowledging that maybe you have to step some things up as you move to a new league. I think that this is the price of playing poker at this point. And then I also think that they're kind of rewarding him because they're happy with the job he's doing. Because I wrote the column when it is announced the other day, because there was a lot of, surprising, responses to this, people not really being sure why it happened. And I was like, all right, I want to try to figure out why Oklahoma's doing this now as far as the production standpoint of what Brent Venables has done as the head coach at Oklahoma. And all I did was I went back to what Joe Castiglione said when they hired him in the first place, which was, in the statement releasing it, he basically said, he pointed out, emphasized it. He says, he's developed one of the country's consistently best defenses. What was Oklahoma's biggest problem under Lincoln Riley? They got to play elite teams and they were giving up 54 points per game. You don't win playoff games allowing 54 points. And then also preparing them for the next level. So better defense, NFL kind of talent. And I went and I looked at the numbers. Venables, clearly, the defense has been better under Venables in his first 2 seasons. In his first year, the improvement wasn't drastic, but last year, it was a very marked improvement across the board in every single stat. And then you look at the recruiting as far as the talent and the development being brought in the NFL level. I went through a whole thing about Oklahoma hasn't really had a first-round pick at the defensive line since like Tommy Harris.
Whoa.
And then, you go through, or no, it was McCoy, but still, the last early draft picks that Oklahoma had were all while Venables was coaching there. And we know what he did while he was at Clemson. He produced, guys every single year. They had one of the best defensive lines in the country year after year. And I just looked at the recruiting under Lincoln Riley in his 5 classes. He had 26 defensive line recruits. 16 of them were blue chip, 4 or 5 stars. But 8 of those guys came in his second class. And then in the other 4 years, there was, maybe 2 or 3 a year. Venables in 3 seasons has 15 total recruits and 10 blue chips. So the blue chip ratio of the guys he's landing on the defensive line are higher. And while the overall number per class is a little lower than what they were with Riley, again, the 1 season with Lincoln really skews the overall numbers. And the other part is in 2 seasons, Venables has brought in 10 guys on the defensive line through the portal, which kind of gives you an idea of what he felt about the talent on hand when he got there that was left behind by the Riley staff. So they won 10 games last year. They did have a 6-7 season. But when you try to break it down based on what Oklahoma is looking for, there's a very solid argument that Brent Venables is doing exactly what they hired him to do, which is improve the defense. Like, the offense is going to be the offense. I don't think Oklahoma is ever really going to have problems landing elite guys on offense, putting up points. It's the defense that has killed them. And while I don't know if we're going to see, I do think part of it is you do it now because you might not be able to do it after next season. Like, because we've talked about Oklahoma's schedule. There's a chance this team goes like 7-5, 8-4. And it'd be kind of hard to announce a contract extension after you have a rough first season in the SEC, but doing it now after a 10-win year, it might catch some people off guard, but I think the timing of it is better.
Yeah, I have some mixed thoughts. Mostly, I don't have a problem with this, right? You bid against yourself in some ways, but you bid against yourself up to where he's still not in the top half, I believe, of SEC coaching salaries.
Mm-hmm.
So if you tell me Oklahoma is getting away with paying its coach not top half of the league in which it is now in, I think we would generally agree that's probably a pretty good deal for the Sooners. Although the buyout, like if it went really, really bad and you had to do something like after this year, would be kind of prohibitive. I thought maybe you could give him more years and some more dollars in exchange for like a 75% buyout as opposed to, as per my reading of it, like 100%. So that seemed maybe unnecessary. We have seen extensions before in advance of what might be a bit of a rocky year, mainly for recruiting purposes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if Oklahoma does go 7-5, like Vegas thinks they will, they can point to, hey, look, man, Brent's our guy. We know it's going to be a tough transition to the SEC. We're in it for the long term. Hey, recruits, we're not about to have a coaching change here. Like we have seen this many times for recruiting purposes. I do think he's done a good job there. There's also something to, like, after winning 10 games, taking care of your people to where, like, if he does kill it, he doesn't have a bad taste in his mouth from you trying to really, really lowball him. So, like, what if Dabo Swinney, I don't think this will happen, but what if it happens that he just hates modern college football and is like, I'm done with this. I'm never going to use the portal, but it's clearly that I have to use the portal now to actually win. I'm going to hang it up. I'm going to retire.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think it happens, but like, who's Clemson's first call if Dabo goes? It's probably Brent, right? And depending on what conference Clemson's in, you know, if you lowballed him, maybe he takes that call. I don't know. So keeping your people happy, not having to pay even a top half SEC salary, overall decent things, I think. Signaling to recruits, another decent thing. Probably a little suboptimal to give him a complete 100% buyout. But remember, like, the people giving these contracts in most cases are the same folks who made the hire. So they're going to be overconfident in the person because they retain that same confidence from when they made the hire. So, like, Joe Castiglione, who hired him, is still going to be like, yeah, man, I made the right call. Like, failing to give a contract extension there after a 10-year or 10-win season is perhaps messaging some doubt, which he doesn't want to do.
Right. I liked a great summation of this was, one reason why everyone is really divided, because you said it's a little bit of both. I've got mixed feelings about this. Created a lot of conversation because it was June 21st. Because it was June, and look, there are a lot of you're bidding against yourself. What has he done so far? But then, the other side of it, I liked it for the other level of this. DeMarco Murray gets a bump out of this. You've got a couple assistants that are also going to be getting a bump out of this. And that is so important here in June, as the recruiting aspect of this is not lost on me when you've got all these big official visit weekends and you're trying to get these guys on campus, and you're trying to tell their parents, like, we are here for the long haul. Class of 2025. Like, look, this now goes through 2029. There's a lot more of that motivation there. But Brent Venables, again, easier to give him this contract right now than it might be after a 6-6 season, which would be pretty good, given the schedule.
The other reason why I think Twitter got in such an uproar over this was we didn't have details when it was announced. Thamel reported it, and he said it was a significant raise. Now, I mean, sure, any sort of raise is significant, but like, is it really a significant raise if he's getting what, like $500,000 more per year?
Yeah,
$600,000 more per year.
Yeah,
and not into the top half of the SEC. Like, if he had left out that word, I don't think Twitter is in such the uproar.
Yeah, but it's the agent wants him to say it was a significant raise, though, bud. So you have to.
That's how the sausage is made. Yeah.
Hey, look, hey, listen. Pete's doing a great job. All right. Coming up on the other side, continuing our series of looking at potential coin flip games with the simplest question: who you got? Plus, Bud's Elite 11 recap and more next.
Have you heard of semaglutides? Ozempic, Mounjaro?
Hartman, this could be dangerous. Let's do it.
South Park: The End of Obesity. New exclusive event. Now streaming. Exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. But I know that your definition of a coin flip game and one possession games is always very important. So I'm just going to let you know that when another sports book, released their full-fledged, games of the year, I went through and I just circled a bunch that were 6 points or less. Now, some of those have moved a little bit. I'm trying to keep this as coin flippy as possible, but I feel good about today's batch. There were 30 that I pulled. We've been going through 3x3. All of today's games are all going to be on the same day. And there are other awesome games on this day too. October 12th is going to be an absolute monster. So let's begin. The first of our games is a Big Ten game between new conference foes. Washington going to Kinnick Stadium to play Iowa. This opened at another book as Iowa -4. But, Bud, the question that we want to know is Washington or Iowa, who you got?
I saw a tweet, and I forget who it was from the other day, but Iowa might have the oldest defense in college football history.
Whoa.
That
I would think
almost
that
makes me
Washington might be able to rival it, but I mean, on a per player basis or however they're adding it up, I could see it.
I mean, dude, this is that's defense that makes me almost not care who plays quarterback for Iowa. Almost. I mean, they did take Sullivan from Northwestern, which makes me a little skeptical that Cade is actually going to be healthy, and by a little, I mean a lot.
I thought he just got cleared.
June 24th.
Yeah, I'll believe what comes out of Iowa when I see it on the field, and not a moment before.
Fair.
But can Washington block them? I don't know. Washington had multiple NFL draft picks, and all of their other starters who did not go to the draft are like starting for national championship contenders. It does seem like a particularly big drop-off to me on the offensive line, and I don't know if they can block Iowa. So I'm going to go ahead and take Iowa.
Yeah, me too. I mean, the game's in Iowa, which I think matters a lot in this situation. But also, I have a better idea of what Iowa's going to be this year than I know what Washington will be, because there are so many new faces on that Huskies roster, and not just on the field, like on the sidelines. It's a completely new coaching staff. And also, as we discussed in the chat before the show, Caleb Brown got a DUI today, which I think means that
Today or
Iowa,
last night?
Last night, over the weekend.
Right, that's awful early in the day to get. Okay.
But it's a horrible thing to get a DUI, but it's also my stupid football brain is like, oh yeah, Iowa's offense is ready. They finally got skill players doing stupid stuff off the field. That's the sign of an offense ready to take a leap forward.
That's college football brain poison right there. You start seeing the like we were forged in the fires of Urban Meyer. Well, as soon as we start to see those arrest reports, like, oh baby, we're ready.
Johnny Football, Baker, Stetson. You start seeing that, you're like,
these truck and firing in the parking lot to feel the fear. Yeah,
exactly.
Remember that was like pre-Twitter. That would have broke Twitter.
Yeah, without a doubt.
20 years ago.
Yeah. The giant question mark around Washington. I feel like there is a medium-sized floor. And I think that's a little bit of like program respect and respect that I have for Jed Fish. But to scan the depth chart is to, okay. All right, cool. We'll see. You know, a lot of we'll see there. So yeah, I'll go Iowa as well. Clean sweep for Kirk Ferentz's group. All right. Now, one of the daggum games of the year, Ohio State going to Eugene, Autzen Stadium, October 12th. This line I can reference. FanDuel Sportsbook, make every moment more. Ohio State -1.5. I pulled it up last night, but we just want to know, and 1.5 suggests as much. Tom, who you got?
Well, I have Big Ten win totals story coming out today that I wrote last week, and I'm going to go with what I picked in that win total. This is, to me, a true coin flip. Like, I could see this one going either way, but I'm going with Ohio State. And I'm high on Oregon. I was high on Oregon all last year. But I also remember picking Oregon to beat Washington twice, and Oregon failing to get over the hump both times in that game. And I think this Ohio State team will be better than the Washington team that reached the title game last year. So I think Oregon can win this game. Like I said, I think it's a true coin flip. But until I see Oregon get over that, proverbial hump, I'm going to be taking Ohio State.
It's weird because I love both of these teams, and I don't love either of the quarterbacks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like so Gabriel was one of the counselors there out of the Elite 11. And I was like, man, he made such a good choice getting a huge bag from Oregon and not trying the draft. Like, he's tiny, and like definitely sub 6 foot tiny. But like, it's not like Howard has been awesome in his college career. So the question to me, like, who has better pieces around them? And honestly, I like both teams. Ohio State probably has more special players, I think, but by a meaningful amount, I don't know. Like, Evan Stewart, what if he's like really, really into ball and healthy? and wants to ball out for them. I think Oregon's defense is probably a bit underrated by folks out there. I'll go ahead and take the Ducks at home.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right there. I think that the margins are close enough that I'm willing to consider some very basic college football stuff, which is that's one of the biggest games in Autzen Stadium history. And I don't think there's like you are making your Big Ten debut season. The Big Ten favorites are coming to town. I would be, and look, there are other games on Oregon's schedule that I would be worried about the look ahead or the hangover. You know, because so much is going to be invested in October 12th. The team that, with the exception of the season opening loss to Georgia, the blasted game in Atlanta, the only other losses for Dan Lanning as a head coach have been 1-score losses. The margins are so slim. This feels like a breakthrough moment. Give me the Ducks at home. I also am glad that you mentioned that the defense is a little bit overlooked, because I feel as though one thing that Dan Lanning did this past offseason was he picked up a lot of pieces in the transfer portal that didn't grab headlines, but you start to look at what they were able to do in terms of building out depth at key positions on the defensive side of the ball. You're all of a sudden taking a step back and realizing this is a team that's not only relying on its top line, that the backups can come in and still give you a quality that is going to have you competing for conference championships. And that could be something that's very important as we're sitting here in mid-October.
Do you want a stat or just hypothetical that might make Oregon fans sick to their stomach?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. Ohio State wins. Iowa loses at Ohio State. The other 8 games for Iowa in conference: Minnesota, Washington, Michigan State, Northwestern, host Wisconsin, at UCLA, at Maryland, host Nebraska. If you're Oregon and you lose this game, you are kind of on, I need to go perfect the rest of the way alert if I want to make the Big Ten title game, because there is a real chance, not a high chance, but it's non-zero, that Iowa goes 8-1 against that schedule with that defense, even if they have no offense still. And they're playing, and the Big Ten is like, damn it. Are you serious? We got rid of divisions and Iowa's still in the Big Ten title game. So if Oregon wins that, it's much better for the Big Ten, because Iowa still has to go to Ohio State where they won't win. And so that probably is how we keep Iowa out of the Big Ten title game.
Iowa catching such a break, not having to play Illinois this year. I just hope this segment, though, like for the Ohio State fans that are saying that I constantly hate on Ohio State, please remember which one of the three of us picked the Buckeyes to win this game.
Well, you hate Ohio State?
According to Ohio State, I hate Ohio State. And according to Michigan fans, I hate Michigan. I was sitting there hyping up Michigan the last 3 years, but they still think I hate them.
So after this game, they still have to go to the Big House to play Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
They still have to go to Camp Randall to play Wisconsin when Wisconsin is coming off a bye, and it will be Oregon's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th game in a row. Like there are scenarios. Yeah, there are scenarios where Oregon does win this game, and to your point, Bud, could fall out of the Big Ten title picture. It is going to be extremely chaotic trying to figure out some of these tiebreak scenarios when we're going into the final weeks of the season. Go ahead.
Not to get too in the weeds here, but I do wonder if Wisconsin has the guys in the secondary to cover Oregon's receivers, even if Oregon's tired.
That's a good question.
True.
I think it was Michigan State who has to play at Ohio State, and then 5 days later has to go play a Friday game at Oregon with no break.
Yeah.
Did you guys see this?
Yeah, I think you're right. Hold on.
All these summer schools are running together, but yeah. So Michigan State, they host Ohio State on September 28th, and then they have to go play a Friday game at Oregon.
That's brutal. Also, Oregon, I'm just going to say it once, and I'm not going to say it again until we get to October. Well, actually, I'll probably say it in July for win totals, but there's a word that you don't want to hear. Spoiler makers. Because you do have to go to Purdue right after. It would be hilarious. I wouldn't be picking it as the break point of a win total. I'm just saying it would be very, very funny. Okay, one last
Highly
one.
unlikely.
Highly unlikely. Very funny. That's part of it being funny, is that it's unlikely. Last one for who you got this edition. Another October 12th game, but this one's a conference game. We've got Ole Miss at LSU, and the Tigers opened up as a 3-point favorite when I first saw this one out. So I think that will qualify as a coin flip. Bud, Ole Miss and LSU in Death Valley on October 12th. Who you got?
I think I'm going to take Ole Miss. But man, that's close. Also,
Over.
Well, by this point in the year, it might be like 75.
Don't care.
What was last year's game? Like 45, 47 or something insane?
48, 45, I think. I have it pulled up right now.
I'm not really convinced that LSU's fixed its defense with personnel. I do think that they probably upgraded by having all of the defensive coaching staff on the same page. Like, that's the vibes I get from talking to people who have been around LSU. Personnel, coaching, probably all more on the same page. So there's some sort of upgrade to be made there. Also, can Ole Miss's defense do anything against LSU? Because LSU's probably got the best offensive line in the country, or if not, it's top 3. And like last year, Georgia, which has about as good an offensive line as LSU, they just pushed around Ole Miss nonstop. Walter Nolan, this is a game that they went out and paid you for, right? Princely, going to need you to get some pass rush here, because I don't think Ole Miss's secondary is actually all that good. So they're going to need to get pressure, with 4 and not have to blitz a whole lot.
LSU. Do you know how many times Ole Miss has beaten LSU in Baton Rouge this century?
Oh, good. Tell me.
Twice. The last time was in 2004, and they play each other every year, or they alternate. And so, I don't know. It is going to be a high-scoring game. It is a coin flip, but the fact that the game is in Death Valley, to me, I have to go with the Tigers. I think Ole Miss has done a ton this offseason to improve their team. I think that the hype around them is considerable, and I think the hype around them is mostly deserved. I also think we're kind of just building this team into a juggernaut when this has been something I've said for the last few years. Until Ole Miss starts winning these games, I'm not going to pick Ole Miss to win these games. Like, LSU has problems. It's still freaking LSU, and it's still going to be at Tiger Stadium, and it's still going to be in Baton Rouge, and it's probably going to be at night. So, LSU.
There's like a physicality element here, and I don't know if we need to apply it to LSU, because LSU last year was not particularly physical, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But if you look at last year, they beat Tulane. In the end, it was comfortable enough because they had that defensive score. But that was definitely like a little bit uneasy, even though Tulane lost their quarterback early in that ballgame, because Tulane was giving them some problems up front. Georgia Tech was never a sweat. Alabama's offense was a complete disaster, and yet the game really never felt all that much in doubt because, at least in my opinion, Bama was just physically pushing them around. They beat LSU by a single score. They beat Arkansas by 7. They beat a really bad Auburn team by 7. They beat a Texas A&M team by 3 that was in total disarray. And then Georgia beat them by 5 touchdowns. So is there a ceiling, like Tom is referencing, on Ole Miss? Can they bring their physicality to the level at which the very best SEC teams play with? I don't know. Like, I think that they will be upgraded there. But, man, that's a big gap. And they get pushed around by the very best recruiters.
I like going inside the matchup for this one because you mentioned Nolan and Princely. Ole Miss went to go get some of the best pass rushers in the game. Unfortunately, you're facing 2 first-round tackles. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's no one's got a better tackle combo than LSU. So if LSU then passes the chalk back to you, what's your next move, your secondary, your third? Like, what's the next play there in the chess match? And I think that I'll go LSU at home for that one.
We haven't seen it yet, but there's also there's a strong possibility LSU has the better QB in this matchup too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Nussmeier might be just an absolute star.
I think that the term that we've used here on the Cover 3 podcast is that he's got a hose.
He does.
Got a hose.
Man's got a hose. You can hear it when he throws. Get Rick Neuheisel on here. We'll write a song about it.
We have one more game on that Saturday, by the way.
Penn State and USC.
Yeah, like that's a game both fan bases are going to expect to win.
I think that's one of the rematch of the epic Rose Bowl. Like it's a really, really, really fun matchup. Who would you take there? It is in Los Angeles, by the way.
Dude, it's so hard because like Penn State showed nothing in that spring game, like intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And USC's offense did not look good in the spring game. They threw a boatload of picks, but they did look basically what will be USC's offense looked pretty good in the bowl game against Louisville. So like, what do you believe? A bowl game or a spring game? Like they both have somewhat diminished meaning, but also probably some signal to them, I guess. Man.
I would go Penn State just because I have questions about every unit in this game except for Penn State's defense.
Oh, or Penn State's.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I'm not going to go on the diatribe about it. I mean, I included him in my top running back rooms, but I can go on a diatribe in Penn State's running backs being kind of overrated.
I trust USC's receivers.
That's a spicy little.
The problem is it's hard to decipher. Is it the running backs or is it the offensive line? I think it's a combination of both. But
sure. I mean, we looked at the offensive line because it had, an NFL tackle, and so we
couldn't run block. By the way,
we just assumed that meant that the star running backs would be able to go, and those are two markedly different skills in terms of trying to put them into practice. I don't know, man. Nick Singleton is special. Give me Penn State. I think they could do it. But again, coin flip game. Looking forward to it. Coming up on the other side, Bud was out there. He was boots on the ground looking at some of the future quarterback stars in college football. A rundown, the names, what he saw, what it might mean for some of these programs moving forward. All that and more next.
There's some new players in town, and they brought the plague.
You got my attention. You don't want that. What happened to Kingstown?
Mayor of Kingstown. New season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. But there's already like so much good content you were able to capture. I know we've still got, even more that's going to be coming out, sort of detailing what you saw and some of the big takeaways from Elite 11. So I'll let you just grab the wheel here. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think we need to start with three guys who have really, in my mind, special upside. Okay, so I don't know that the 25 quarterback recruiting class has a whole lot of guys who are like crazy polished and crazy toolsy, but I definitely see guys who, if they hit, the ceilings are those of high draft picks. Right, they're maybe just a little bit further away than like a Nico or an Arch were. In comparison to a recent class of which we like the prospects a lot, or an Arnold or somebody like that. Let's go ahead and start with the guy that Elite 11 named as the winner. We went with Taven Sinclair, but Elite 11 went with Keelan Russell. Honestly, it was very neck and neck for us as well, with Ivins and Coop and Biggins deciding it. Let's go ahead and roll the tape there on Keelan Russell. Kid out of Texas. We first saw him I first saw him at Battle Miami when he was committed to SMU. I had visited SMU because my wife and I went to Dallas for a country concert, and they knew that this kid was the goods and that it was going to be a battle to hold on to him. Really accomplished as a high school starter. Now, he basically said that his NFL comp was like Lamar Jackson, but also really good at passing. And I'm like, that's ambitious, but dude, like the performance out there was really strong. His high school numbers have been good, like high completion percentage. He is a really nice playmaker with his legs, but I think the high level throws that he made at the event, both at 7-on-7 and some of the throws he made on the pro day, were really damn impressive. And it's like, okay, yeah, like let's stamp this dude. By the way, on day 2 and day 3, they have just like guys who are going to be going pro in something other than sports running these routes. If you guys are watching YouTube, on night 1, we had like legit 5-star prospects out there. A lot of these dudes are not as fast as like you would expect them to be, and they're not used to this velocity like at all. So Keelan had, I think, 3 or 4 touchdown drops in like maybe a 30 throw period coming up. So anyway, he had a really nice day, made a bunch of high level throws, and it was just, we knew he could make plays with his legs.
Some of these we knew that like he was running those routes. Yeah,
like a really accomplished guy. But also like the high level throws that he was asked to make and did make were pretty impressive. So like, yeah, Bama fans, I think you should be really happy that you got Keelan Russell.
It's funny, like you mentioned, the kid says he's like Lamar Jackson, but a better passer. It's funny because you hear like the kids say those things and you laugh at him. You're like, really? But at the same time, good. That's how I want him to think about himself. That's what I want him. Those are the expectations I want my quarterback putting on himself. I want that kind of confidence. So I think that's a good thing, even if it is. All right, we'll see, buddy. But sure.
And it wasn't like in a disrespectful, but
I was gonna say, it sounds disrespectful.
Yeah,
Lamar Jackson's a good passer.
I'm prompting him, be like, hey, like, for folks who haven't seen you, who's your NFL comp for a bunch of videos that we do? And he's like, oh, Lamar Jackson, but also like a really good passer. And we're talking like what their best ratings will be in EA. And he's like, oh, speed 90, throw power 98. I think it was just, okay. So that's, and then he also thinks they're going to ding him on his ball security because he's like mobile quarterbacks get dinged on the ball security by the ratings. So he wants to know that he's not a fumbler.
The whoopsie daisy rate.
Yeah, did he have anything to say about Kalen DeBoer or the offensive coaching staff and sort of the way that process has gone?
So it wasn't like stick a microphone in his face and ask him about that because I was just really doing more social content shorts. But he did take note of what DeBoer did with Penix and it was really, really impressed by that. I know he also had a pretty long interview you guys can watch, I believe, on Bama 247 with Tom Loy, who's one of our national guys on the 24/7 side. So he was pretty impressed with what DeBoer had done with Penix. He's grabbing the mic after the event and talking to all these receivers. Hey, like, come play with me. I just want to lead 11. Let's come play in this offense. Everybody gets drafted. So it was it was cool to watch. And like I would say like almost none of these kids were like none of them acted like idiots. It's like, okay, like they handled the moment and you should, right? Like it's there's no reason for anybody to act like a dummy. And none of them did. So that's cool.
You mentioned Tavian St. Clair would have been y'all's pick. So what stood out about him as, again, I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, Alabama and Ohio State have the best quarterback recruits. Okay. Yeah. We're really going to have a lot of parity in college football moving forward.
So this is back-to-back Alabama commit at the time, Elite 11 MVPs, because Julian Sayin won last year. And then Sayin, of course, flipped to Ohio State via transfer once Bill O'Brien left Alabama for Ohio State went to Ohio State. Anyway, Tavian St. Clair he looks like if Dylan Raiola was ripped. Okay, like that same type of build. Like, oh, that's a college player already. You could see him. Like this guy
he's thick.
That guy's a tight end.
Dude, I'm telling you, like he's going to be very difficult to bring down. Good pocket mobility. Has the ability to make all of the throws. I think he scored pretty well in the pro day. He operated 7-on okay. It's also important, like you have to understand some of the nuance here. Some of these guys play competitive 7-on like every single weekend, and some of these dudes, based on playing other sports or in some states, they just don't really, I don't know if they're not allowed to, but like it's not really encouraged to play a lot of 7-on. Like not a lot of Ohio kids play a ton of 7-on, which is where he's from. So, watching St. Clair, like I kind of grade his 7-on a little bit of a curve, right? Because I'd seen him play at OT7 in Orlando, and I was not super impressed with the 7-on work, and he was better at Elite 11 with it, but can make all the throws. Big guy, like the motion's smooth. There's not like some weird little hitch going on. He can change arm angles, good balance. It's what you want. Like, oh, you look like a college junior. Awesome. And you don't have any weird like throwing motion stuff that we really have to clean up. And they try to challenge these guys. Like, look, like they're throwing bags at them and make them jump around. And it's just, who can kind of handle it, who can make all the throws that you need. Because a lot of these high school offenses, they don't ask much of you. Right? It's like, hey, just, especially if you can run, like the defense is so focused on your legs. A lot of it's just short stuff.
How tall is he?
6'3.5", I would say.
So he's like 220. He looks like a man.
Yeah.
And he's what, 17, 16?
17. Yeah, I don't think he's a holdback. He's definitely not 16.
Christ.
Yeah.
That's a man.
All right. So Notre Dame has a really good quarterback room right now. CJ Carr right there as a freshman. What'd you think about Deuce Knight, who's going to be coming up behind him?
So Deuce Knight, dude from Mississippi, the lefty in this group, he is like special upside, man. We've known about the running, and Elite 11 is not about running, but it is important to discuss it a little bit here. 2 weeks ago at OT7, one of the teams decided to blitz him, and you can blitz an OT7 7-on. I was like, oh, that's probably not real smart. And in my brain, I think those of us of a certain age have the whole, Vince Young scores going on in the background as he he just strided on these dudes. Like he's like probably, he's the tallest out there, long strides. It's easy velocity with the legs. But what I've been impressed with is how much better he's gotten as a passer. He actually wasn't the best I've seen him be at Elite 11. I had seen him at a couple OT7s and a couple 7-ons throughout the summer. I was like, man, I want to see the consistency. And then 2 weeks ago at OT7, he finally put it all together and had like 3 days back to back where he always makes high level throws, but he was making his layups, right? And that's what I wanted to see. I'm like, I don't want to see the stuff where we're having accuracy problems on kind of the short and intermediate stuff. Just hit the open dudes, because you're going to have a lot of open dudes with how big of a threat your legs are. And then he went out, and like the former NFL quarterbacks out there were like, holy cow, like with some of these deep balls that he threw. Like that's a pretty nice drop.
Catch that.
Yeah, right. And they're like, he was making some throws that I was talking to O'Sullivan, who runs QB school on the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
There's some NFL guys that don't make these throws. Now, the consistency gonna need to be better, right? Like he wasn't great in 7-on-7 this time, but I am very encouraged by the progression that he's shown year to year. We're gonna need to see him put it together, on the high school stage come this fall. But like I would say, as far as if I was running a collective, right, or like a front office for a team, I think the 3 guys out there at Elite 11 that I would drop the bag for if I had a chance to land them. Like if my staff had done a good enough job to have me in position, like relationship wise, fit wise, coaching wise, like the 3 guys I would bag drop for, right? Russell, St. Clair, and Knight, because I would feel like an idiot if they hit and I didn't decide to pay up for it. Like those, I think those 3 have a different ceiling than the others. Doesn't mean they'll hit it, but
right. All right. One question before we get a little bit further down the list. Where was Bryce Underwood?
So Bryce Underwood, who's the number 1 overall player, did not participate. I don't believe he went to a regional, but he was not on the list. And Tennessee's commit also, I believe, had a bad thumb injury that required stitches, so he did not participate. But no Underwood out there, which would have been cool to compare him. Like I've seen Underwood a good bit in person, but it's nice to kind of stack everybody at the same stage.
Yeah, Underwood committed to LSU right now, and 2025 class that's losing a couple of notable guys here through this June. All right, so let me throw this at you real quick. Underwood, Russell, St. Clair, Knight. Do you feel like all 4 of those guys are pretty locked in? You don't see any changes between now and December?
I mean, I think Ole Miss will continue to try to make a run at Deuce Knight, right? Like he's the in-state kid, but I think Notre Dame has done a great job with the relationships. He said all the right things about the Irish. Tom Loy had him there for an interview, and he seemed to really be in to Notre Dame. Seems like a kid who also really values the academics that the Irish have. So I don't think it's just some inevitability that he flips to Ole Miss. But if I'm Ole Miss, I'm going to continue to try.
Man, nothing like nothing hits the senses quite like a nerd who's good. Yes,
yeah.
Yes. We got this. It's our time. Let's go. All right. Who else? Take us wherever you want. What are some of the other names that stood out for various reasons?
All right. I think my favorite fit is Hassan Longstreet.
Okay.
Kid from California. He's committed to Texas A&M. So this guy is twitched up. He's jacked. He's got the ability to make all the throws. I don't want to call it herky-jerky, but there is a little bit of that in the motion. But, I mean, dude, he's pretty damn good. And from a mobility and ability to play fast and threaten the defense with his arm and his legs, I just absolutely love that fit that he has with Colin Klein. Like, think about what Colin Klein ran there when he was Kansas State's offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
That's who Texas A&M hired to be their offensive coordinator now. And I also like this dude, man, he cares about competing. His toe was pretty jacked up at this event. You can actually see it here on the film. Like, it's taped, and I had a source at Elite 11 say, like, hey, man, don't do anything day one, because day one is really, really like workload heavy. Just come out and do the pro day and do the 7-on so you can get through this. And he was like, nah, screw that. I'm a competitor. I'm going to tape up and go.
Gamer.
And he did, man. And
let's go.
I think he's a lot more athletic when his foot or toe or whatever is all jacked up. But he had a really nice week too. So I was very impressed with what Longstreet did. I think if you're an A&M fan, you got to love the fit, man. He's he's pretty damn good and kind of right there on that edge.
Nice. Who else?
Two more names to watch here. So I think Maryland is in pole position with this quarterback named Malik Washington, who's in their backyard. I was very impressed with him, dude. Like his progression was nice. His accuracy was on point. He is a guy who can run around if you need him to, but he's trying to be pass first. He had a very strong week, and if you're Maryland, man, things are looking up. Like if you're able to get this kid and able to hold on to him, you're not stuck in the Big Ten East anymore, which is just means you got a couple more winnable games, and to go from having Talia to go to have Malik Washington, I think I'd be pretty impressed. Like good velo, the motion is fairly clean, and there's a lot to work with there. So I was impressed, and he got better as the week wore on, I thought too.
So yeah, we'll have MJ Morris for Maryland this year, but the rest of that room is kind of there for the taking, right?
Yeah. One more kid, well, actually maybe a couple more, but so Kamario Taylor is a dude committed to Mississippi State, and he missed most of his sophomore year with a ankle fracture. So we did not see a whole lot of him as a sophomore. He had a nice junior year and led the team to, I believe, a state title appearance there. If you could see him, he also is in the looks like a college junior category right now on the screen. This is probably one of the episodes you should watch on YouTube, but we always appreciate all of our 5-star listeners on the podcast side. He got so much better as the week went on and like how much more comfortable he got. Night one, I thought he struggled a little bit, just kind of figured it out. Night two, some struggles, but got better. And then he came close to throwing 7 touchdowns and 7 on and made like high level throws and just ripping the ball. And it was into the wind, and it was the last group. So like everybody was tired. Damn. Okay. Like this is some serious juice he has. And if I'm Mississippi State, I'm like, okay, collective, I'm going to need you to really plan ahead here. We're going to need some financial planning, because if he keeps progressing and like goes big time senior year, I know there's a lot to work on in the game, but man, I was very impressed with the upside that he has. And also he's a dude who really can hurt you with the legs as well. Like there's some Dak Prescott vibes there for Mississippi State fans. And I know a lot of teams that are continuing to monitor this situation closely and will probably continue to
gold
him
bars,
down the stretch.
Costco gold bars ain't going to cut it. We're gonna need to put together something substantial to be able to keep everybody else at bay.
I was looking at that kid, and I want to put like 40 pounds on him and put him on the edge.
Dude, yeah, he looks like a college tight end.
Yeah. We're just seeing this again. Great episode to watch. YouTube.com/cover3. We're getting good looks at all these guys. Have you sensed that? And you've been to a lot of these camps. You followed this. And are we just sort of building more towards that type where the tight end sized quarterback is no longer strange to see, because they just most of them are looking like that?
So I think it's as we mentioned at the beginning of this Elite 11 show, your biggest tool guys this year are like big dudes who can run, who have big arms, but they're still kind of figuring it out in some ways, right? Keelan's tall, but he's not wide.
Yeah, I agree.
But like St. Clair is big. Deuce is wider than Keelan, and he's also taller. Hassan, as you saw, is pretty jacked,
big.
And then there's some other guys in this class who are not. I think like the frame is more limited, but the polish is higher. And to me, there was a real kind of bifurcation. It's like, all right, smaller guys who I can win with them. It's sort of like, okay, would I break the bank for Kirk Cousins? No. Can I win with him? Yes. There's sort of like win because guys and win with guys. I would put Georgia's Ryan Montgomery in a sort of like win with category. I think Florida State's Tramel Jones, if he sticks, is in that win with category. KJ Lacey committed to Texas, very small kid, but great balance, much better arm than you think he would have, can throw from multiple angles. So he's sort of a win with. Luke Nickel committed to Miami, I think, is a win with as well. But in my head, I was kind of classifying. It's like, all right, if these guys hit, you're winning because of them. If some of these other guys hit, you're sort of winning, with them.
What about you said if he sticks with Florida State, what did you pick up any sort of, buzz or anything in terms of the way that these different recruitments are playing out with some of these other guys?
Yeah, I think most of these ones are pretty stable. Tramel Jones just got off his visit from Florida State. He went in there and flew in. We were both at LAX that night, and I know Florida's recruiting him really hard. There's a lot of his friends who are also going to UF or likely going to UF. So we'll have to see if just kind of what the best fit is there. The rest of these, like I know UCF likes Kamario Taylor a lot. I think based on his performance in that 7-on at Elite 11, probably more teams will pick up on that. Malik Washington is not committed to Maryland yet, but I think a lot of people think that is a likelihood, and that would be a great get for the Terps. Luke Nichols said that Florida State's recruiting him. That's the Miami commit. KJ Lacey, I know people are still kind of monitoring the situation there at Auburn. Auburn's also in on Juju Lewis, who's committed to USC. Other than that, like most of these seem kind of squared away.
Where's Juju from? Yeah, why wasn't Juju at the?
No, he was.
Okay,
he was. Yeah, he's kind of in that win-with category, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He also reclassified. Like he should be at 26, but he's at 25 now. Historically, I know Andrew Ivins has done a lot of work on this for us. That does not work out very often. Like playing less high school football is generally not a good thing unless you're like a lot older and probably should be in the class up anyway physically. So we'll have to see how that works out.
Yeah, last week USC, it was a little bit of a recruiting headline, lost a couple of defensive linemen from the state of Georgia. They'd done a good job of getting talent from the Southeast, and now all of a sudden, it's who else would be? I know Juju Lewis is going to do an official visit to Indiana, or already has.
Yep.
Colorado, Auburn as well. You think the Trojans are going to be able to keep them on board?
I think it's possible. It just kind of depends on how much they want him and how much everybody else wants him too. But he's a talented guy. Definitely has some polish to his game, and we'll just kind of see. Definitely one to monitor. I thought Baker, kid committed to North Carolina, has some real arm juice there, Chip. So
nice.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, anything to keep the
throw
party
for
going.
4,000 yards as the Tar Heels go 8-5.
Listen, gonna light it up. You're never gonna see Kenan Stadium rock like when they're beating Miami, and you're never gonna see despair like when Georgia Tech beats them. Mac Brown 1-3 against Georgia Tech since returning to. It's like
bees sting.
Yeah, Georgia Tech, Virginia, and Florida State. That's the trinity of pain for North Carolina football right now. Awesome stuff, bud. I really appreciate it. And those of you, again, who watched it, got to see some great highlights. We've got a lot more that is coming and a lot more that is available all on YouTube, youtube.com/cover3. On Wednesday, when we are back together here live at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we'll be breaking down the 2024 edition of the Blue Chip Ratio. Bud is the author, the originator of the Blue Chip Ratio. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, we'll give you a nice little crash course, but most importantly, looking at the teams that have been recruiting at the level that leads to national championships, as well as those other ones that might be just outside the threshold, as we are in a 12-team playoff era. I think that it's fair to say that there are going to be multiple teams in the college football playoff this year who do not fit the Blue Chip Ratio. How close are they? That might be something to keep an eye on. And as we said at the top of the show, the big old bag of mail front and center the rest of the week. You go give us a 5-star review. In that review, you put your question. We will tackle it this week in a mailbag episode. And you can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. You can follow him at Tom Fernelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Has Rutgers cracked the Blue Chip Ratio yet?
Close.
Stay tuned.